Hi there and welcome to the Coffee Grinds, hosted by Mug.News. We are your baristas, Justin Krug
and Caitlin Clays. We have a great menu today that highlights impressive student entrepreneurs in Middle America.
So grab a cup of coffee and let's get to the grind. Hello and welcome to our first official episode of Coffee Grinds. We are your baristas, Justin Krug
and Caitlin Clays. I am so excited to get started on our very first episode of Coffee Grinds. Justin, are you excited?
Yes. Oh man. If you can't tell, just feel the virtual energy from me emitting. Yes, I'm so excited, so excited. I think the biggest thing that I'm excited for, Caitlin, is kind of uplifting some entrepreneurs in their communities, young founders that are doing some great things, or maybe it's not even that they own a business, but they're just plugged into their entrepreneurial community at such a young age and are just actively trying to make a difference. Identifying those people and hearing their stories, I think it's great. So super pumped. What about you, Caitlin?
Well, absolutely. And what I'm excited for is that we get to definitely talk to these students. And so I figured for this first episode, we should kind of tell the audience and tell the future students a little bit about ourselves. So I've got three main questions. So I hope you have a cup of coffee and some high caffeine energy to get started.
Well, Caitlin, as you know, I'm always high energy, whether I've got coffee in my system or not. So fire away. Let's get this thing on the road, yeah?
All right. To get started, I wanted to ask you, how did you first get involved with Mug.News, which is what Coffee Grinds is hosted by?
Yes. Wow. Well, we got to look at the old clock and set it back about 2 years. So as you know, Caitlin, I'm a student at the University of Nebraska at Omaha right now. But actually 2 years ago, I was at Iowa Western Community College. And student athlete there, and my last year there, it was my last class. It was an intro to entrepreneurship class, and that was kind of like my first taste into the entrepreneurship world, the community, and I was just like hooked, right? And so I distinctly remember on the last day of class, we actually toured the Small Business Development Center, which is right on campus. And so we went down. They gave us the spiel of what they do and how they help entrepreneurs, and I thought it was great. It's like, shoot, okay. Like if I ever think about running a business, this is a great resource. They help build websites. They help you through the logic of whether you're starting from scratch or you've already got an existing business. So it was very cool. And afterwards, about an hour in, they said, all right, well, that's about all we had on the schedule for today. But if you want to stick around, and by that time, everyone had shot through the door, like they were gone. Because our teacher said, well, guys, that's it. Thank you. It's been great, knowing you, getting to know you. And by that time, pretty much, like I said, everyone was gone. I was the last one in there. They told us if we stuck around, we could talk more about questions we had about the SBDC. We could also ask them about other resources, connections for internships, and that's when my ears perked up and I was like, shoot, okay, yeah, let's do this. So got connected. They took my contact info and they said, we're going to pass this along to Scott. Scott's someone we know pretty well. And as you know, Scott Bragg and Tom Chapman, best of friends since high school and obviously work together now. And after a few email exchanges, I was plopped down in their office, nervous, not really knowing what to expect. And we basically sat there and talked about soccer and my school and kind of where I grew up. And after getting to know each other a little bit, they said, all right, well, we have a team meeting on Monday. See you then. And it was the most unofficial job interview I've ever been in, but the best one I've ever been in. I feel like if an interview goes like that, you're doing something good. So that's how I ended up at Chapman & Company. And of course, as you know, Caitlin, a couple years later, this idea for Mug.News started rolling around, and I'll table that for now. But Caitlin, what about you? How did you end up working for Mug.News and Chapman & Company?
It's wild how similar our stories are. It was the first time I ever had such a relaxed interview as well. So it's actually kind of funny. So for me, my side business is doing voiceover, audiobooks. That's what I'm up to. And so in order to do and work in that industry, you need to have a killer website. And so Amy Galing, who works for Chapman and Company, she's done graphics, she's super involved. But I reached out to her and asked if she had any advice for making a website. I told her my goals of working in voiceover and working in film, and she had told me she's like, I'm gonna introduce you to someone, and I think you guys would just have a good conversation. Just some person I think you should talk to. And I was like, okay, sounds great. So it was Tom Chapman. And I went into the conversation with him very relaxed. I told him about my goals of voiceover, and he had said that he was starting Mug.News. So I'm a little later to the game than you are. But he was like, I want a podcast. I want some programming. These are the kind of things I'm looking for. And he said, why don't you go ahead and send me some of your stuff, some of your work, and we'll go from there. So a week and a half, 2 weeks passed, and I reached out to him again. And I was kind of nervous. I was like, what if he hated my work? What if it wasn't as good as I thought it was? And, he's a very stoic person. And so he, started the conversation, and he said, you're hired. Yeah, we'll get started right away. And I was like, really? And he said, yes, of course, you were hired after the first interview. And that's where it all started. I was like, this is great. Let's go. I'm just really happy to be here. And then once I got working for Chapman and Company, then it got transferred over to Mug.News. So I've written articles here and done voiceover and done the podcast. And now I'm doing the show here at Coffee Grinds with you, and we're collaborating on this. So it just, absolutely take a bow. So that's the long and short of it, of how I came to be here and working with you.
I love that. I have to say, by the way, for anyone out there, Caitlin is very talented, and so is Amy. I have to throw that in there. So I mean, if you're looking for any talented voiceover actresses, I know someone.
Well, thank you for that plug, Justin. Also, you are a fantastic technical writer that you've done stuff for Mug.News as well. See any mug shots on the website? Yeah, that's Justin. That's does so much work. So honestly, the stuff that I've written for Mug.News, I've definitely looked at some of your articles and be like, okay, what's some inspiration I can do to get this done? So awesome. I'm so this was so cool to get to listen to both of our introductions and how things came to be. I love that it's just a little chaotic of everything just coming together. So then moving on to the next question is, we'd been working on Mug.News together since I came on in July. So I wanted to ask is, how did this idea for Coffee Grinds come to be?
Yes. What a good question. Well, Caitlin, I'm a very energy-driven person, and that does not just from the physical side, that's also mental, right? There's a lot going on in this head of mine. And so I through that, I just come up with a lot of ideas. And that's how I first kind of understood that I was entrepreneurial. There's a running joke in my family that I'm like the $1 million idea guy. And so, I'll walk into the living room, guys, I got it. And they're like, oh, what is it now, Justin? Like, what? But hey, eventually one's gonna be a home run. But back to the show for a second. That's kind of where it started, right? It was just an idea, just one of my ideas. And I was heavily drew inspiration from my role as president of UNO's Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. And through this, I've invited company founders from across the U.S. These people are what we call older, Caitlin, right? They're more experienced. And so we've heard their stories, and I was like, well, shoot, there's got to be students out there that are my age or younger that are also in the process of climbing that mountain, of that journey of entrepreneurship. I want to hear their stories. And so that is really where a lot of that inspiration came from. And then, of course, we had talked about, how is this content going to be delivered? And I know offline I mentioned I watch a lot of video. I watch YouTube videos. I love it. And so I was like, what if we could pull those two together and crumple it up and make it one. So I was like, interviewing student founders on videos, short videos that we can send out and spread the word. And really, the main thing is just connecting these communities with bridges, right? So pulling student founders from across the states in the middle. And then it's like the gates opened after that. It's just like really and then once you got involved, it was just like all downhill from there. And we just got a lot of traction. We started steamheading this, but would love to get your perspective on kind of what drew you into being interested in kind of taking this idea on with me.
Straight up. So my thing is that it started like a startup spotlight, which is on mug.news, and it's exactly what you're talking about. We're featuring entrepreneurs, more experience, like you'd said, and you had brought up the idea of highlighting students, and I heard that and I was like, this is a great idea. So you're right. You do have $1 million ideas.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I knew there was going to be one.
Yes. It's like, look at me now, mom and dad.
Yes.
I'm not the only one saying it.
I'm going to save that. Can I just save that as a ringtone, Caitlin? And
I support it. Yeah. Just you record that and put it. I love it.
Perfect.
Have that as your alarm before meetings.
Yes. Now we're talking. I love this.
So I'm a big person of themes. So you had the original one of let's get students on there. And I was like, there has to be a theme that we can go with. And so that's kind of where the caffeine came in, students getting to the grind with coffee grinds. And so also mug.news, where it's a coffee mug. And we just kind of started spitballing, and I love that it was a joke at first of just like, oh, what about puns? We love puns. And it just snowballed, like exactly like you said. And I loved it. I was here for it. I love all the creative elements that we're kind of incorporating with this show. And right, so you had the idea. I actually have the technical skills, which is the recording, the video editing. And I, like you said, was let's have this be YouTube based. So, for example, I'm the co-host of the Ecosystem Builder podcast with Mug.news with Nick Kastner. And so we have a podcast. We have a good going podcast, and we transfer it over to YouTube when essentially, though, our target is the podcast. And so with you, we are YouTube based. And then eventually, depending on when this video airs, we do want it to be a podcast as well, but we're focusing on YouTube first. So I love this progression. It took us 3 months of preparation to get this started. We spent a lot of time and are spending a lot of time continuing this process. So it took a lot of preparation, and I'm just finally excited to be started and being here right now.
Yeah, and a lot of coffee puns, Caitlin.
Yeah, the storyboarding. We literally, for the audience, we sat down and came up with as many puns as possible. And I was like, this is great. I'm really happy to be working on this. This is storyboarding. I love the energy. Speaking of being excited and having high energy, my last question for you is, what are you most looking forward to in this series working on together?
Yes. And I think I might have spoke to this earlier. I'm just really, through my role as president of Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, just bringing opportunities to students, educational opportunities, but also inspiring them to aspire to become entrepreneurs is just really powerful to me. Mm-hmm. And so highlighting these students that are in the trenches, right, that are working on these businesses or getting plugged into their entrepreneurial communities at such a young age, that's the thing I'm excited most for, is uplifting them, having their stories be told, because I really think by putting them on a platform, it's really gonna snowball effect other entrepreneurs and other communities to say, you know what, I can do this. Mm-hmm. If so-and-so from the University of Nebraska at Omaha is working on this business, why don't I just start mine? So I think it's really that's what I'm most excited for, is encouraging entrepreneurs to just take that leap. especially at a young age, right? Because that's when we can recover the most from it. I mean, you're in school maybe, you've got quite a bit of time on your hands. You don't have a family quite yet. Like, if there's any better time to be an entrepreneur, it's then. So, in my opinion. But what about you, Kaylin? What are you most excited for?
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head with inspiring students. One thing that I'm looking forward to is I really want to ask the nitty-gritty questions of students of what are you struggling through right now? And what I mean by that is that to hear and collaborate with students, students inspiring other students, that it's going to be tough. There are going to be downfalls and it's really important to understand that we can all work together. And I want other students to hear about what they're working on. And I guess I just am so excited to have a different perspective. I've been interviewing ecosystem builders and entrepreneurs who have been in the business for about 15 years minimum. And everyone has to start somewhere. That's the same thing as an actor, as a creative person making videos or anything. You have to start somewhere. And so you might not be an overnight success the moment you start your business or the moment you win an internship or an award. You just have to start, and it's great. And I'm really excited that you and I are going to be able to get to help students in that sense and get to know them. I'm really excited to hear all their different stories and progress.
Yeah, you and me both, Kaylin. I am just so pumped for this and really excited that you're along for the ride and for all the coffee puns that follow. That's one of the highlights for me. But
Well, that is all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for visiting the coffee shop, everyone. We are excited to open our doors to student entrepreneurs to come on in and share their story.
And hey, if you have any recommendations on who we should invite into the coffee grinds, make sure to leave a comment below.
And as always, you can find out more information about Coffee Grinds hosted by Mug.News in the menu description below. You can find us on socials at Mug News Official, at Clays Creates, or Justin Krug on LinkedIn.
And with that being said, stay caffeinated, and we will see you next time at the Coffee Grinds.